Hello, and welcome to Jason Cabinet's Experience. I'm your host, Jason Cabinets. The Jason Cabinet's Experience is brought to you by Cabinets HR. At Cabinets HR, we deliver HR to companies with 4,900 fewer people with our HR platform and providing you by providing you a dedicated HR business partner. Our guest today is Rubelyn Chu. Rubelyn, you ready to be great today?
Yeah, every day is a great day, right?
Yes. Rubelyn is part of the Alumni Advisory Board and advisee in the entrepreneurship program at Northwest University. She also mentors local high school and college students. When she isn't working, she can be found in the gym, going on road trips, traveling, or with family and friends. Rubelyn, thanks for being here today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Jason. And it's a pleasure being able to have this conversation with you today after all the pandemic stuff. And
Yes. So me and Rubelyn, good friends like 2 or 3 years. So it's gonna be a fun talk. Catch up on go times.
Yeah.
So first, I'm gonna throw you a softball question.
Okay.
Now, I'm pretty sure I saw this on one of your like social media platforms. I tried to find it today, I couldn't see it, but on there it says "cool auntie." So, what does a cool auntie mean to you? And is it safe to presume that you're a cool auntie, but your brothers and sisters are like, quit spoiling my kids? Like,
Yeah,
what are you doing?
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so I have my nieces, I work from home majority of the time, but my nieces are at home about 3, 4 times a week. And I also, my friends' kids and everything, they just when they see me, it seems like it's playtime. It's playtime, and it's like, okay, let's go running, let's go do this. We, everything and anything, get their energy out. But I also I like to give candy, candy and chocolate and toys.
How old are your nieces and nephews?
I have 2 nieces. They are Kiana just turned 3. Kira's turning 5 in May. And then a lot of my friends' kids, they're toddler age, maybe about 2 or 3, 6, 4. I think the oldest I have as a god baby is 12. I have a lot.
So all the fun, but no responsibility.
Correct.
So kind of the same story. I had a guy on like maybe a couple of weeks ago. He's a grandfather. He was telling me about like he said, I feel the best way to get along with my grandkids, never say no.
Oh, I say no. I say no a lot to my nieces. I think if anything, it's teaching me a lot more about patience. I mean, patience and everything, not my own responsibility, but I think patience of seeing the lens of teaching them manners, teaching them like a little bit of responsibilities. When they're at the house, you don't get a surprise unless you pick up your toys, or how do you ask properly. My parents, their mama, papa, for sure is always a yes for
Yeah.
everything. And when when they do come to me, there are no's with me sometimes, but you just have to keep going.
So you know
Keep
the real
going.
difference. This guy, he said he never says no. He says you make some like chocolate cake and chocolate chip pancakes for breakfast. He said he has a rule: no dinner to eat all your candy.
Yeah. That is no. Well, yes, I give a lot of candy and all that stuff, but I have to tell them like you won't get any more unless you have your dinner or your lunch
Okay,
or like healthy stuff, right? So
you're being reasonable then.
being reasonable, and I'm like, okay, you're gonna negotiate with auntie. We gonna negotiate this way.
Teaching them business skills right off the top.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I started also talking about, you pick up your toys, I'll give you a quarter. You have enough money saved, then we can go to the store and we can buy something.
So you have 2 nieces, right?
Yes.
And so I don't know if this played into your logic. Do you ever think like when you like negotiating with them and doing your stuff
Mhm.
that okay, you're training them to be future businesswomen?
Yeah, yes and no, because the older one, Kira, she knows how to negotiate. I will tell you that right now. She's like, "How about this one? Or how about that one?" And I'm like, "No." And I was like, "You got to do it this way. If you do it this way, then you have it everything." And then yeah, she knows how to negotiate, but she's also very artsy and crafty. They're both very creative in their ways of approaching things and when they're asking for stuff. Yeah.
So somewhere on your LinkedIn profile, you had on there, and explain what this means to you. The quote: "The key is to never give up."
Yeah, you don't. That's a good segue. I was actually thinking about this as I was driving to your studio. Um, you know, I started off in the medical field. I was studying to become a nurse. I mean, I think culturally it was the path that was understood that people would take. I'm Filipino, first generation Filipino American, and what's understood is that you would get into the nursing school, you would get into somewhat in the medical field or engineering, or you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer.
It's like pretty much understood, right? Like
Understood, yeah.
that's what you do.
Yeah, that's what you do, right? But I'm not going to get into all politics on that. But the segue of that was when I did start studying, going into nursing school. I failed microbiology 3 times. That should have been my sign. This ain't it for me. Um, and I had to retake it 3 times. I was at South Seattle at the time. I got my associates, and then I transferred into Gonzaga. That's where I met a lot of people, right? You meet a lot of people when you're not in the same environment you were in. And then I was like, okay, what I should have done was pay attention to the signs, and everything was like sciences and all of that weren't my thing. I kept putting that off in my life. I was like, oh, I'll take the sociology work. I like that one better. You know, um, I wanted to do that. I was paying attention to that. I was watching The Wire. I was writing papers. How would you dissect the little things, And that and all these business courses and all the psychology courses were way intriguing than these science classes to me. Yeah, maybe I was in the nurturing side of things, but when it came down to the work to get to the nursing stuff, it was not my thing. And so I persevered, and I was like, okay, let me figure out how I'll tell this to my parents. I'm not going to be a nurse. you know, um, yeah. And so that had happened. I told them that because all the opportunities that were coming to me were definitely in the business world. I didn't have to work for it. A lot of the operational stuff just really gravitated towards me. Um, and I was just trying to figure out how would I persevere when people are finishing their degrees in like 4 or 5 years. It's taking me 7 years to finish my freaking BA. And then I was like, finally, I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna do this. I'm not gonna do this, and I'm gonna continue business. And then yeah, it just went from there. And so first things first, I was like, humility and humbleness is very part of the success of not giving up, and be very resilient to where you are going or where you are wanting to go, where you see it going.
So you bring a good point. You say never give up, but it's not like you say never give up, however, comma, don't be stubborn about it, right?
Yeah.
Like don't
Oh
be
yeah,
crazy.
because I'm stubborn.
Don't be crazy about it. You saw that nursing thing wasn't the path for you.
Yeah.
So you don't mean never give up and keep on bumping your head against the wall. Like
Yeah.
be smart about it,
Yep. Yep. I mean, I think within that statement too is that once you are known of what you are wanting to do, have the humility and the humility of it, of like, okay, this is not for me, and it's okay, but also have the courage and thick heart and skin to pursue what you are wanting to do, because there's definitely going to be a lot of rejections. I'll tell you that right now.
Rubelyn, why do so many startup founders, entrepreneurs, business owners, we say, lack humility and have such big egos and like, I can do everything, I know everything, and it ends up making them fail quicker?
I, it's a different answer for everybody for that question, but I think what really sets people apart from the egoness and the humility part of that is that not everyone knows everything. I mean, people have different experiences to go through what they need to go through in order to get where they are today. Like, I had to get through that, right? In order for me to finally like, oh shoot, I'm gonna do this. And this is that. I was fortunate enough to land management in tech after undergraduate school. And I think from there, I was like, oh, I had the opportunity to meet people in all this and figuring out, I'm like, oh, this is what's happening here. This is what's happening here, but also be humble enough to ask for help when you need it and not burn out. I come from that experience. I've seen it. I've felt it. I've definitely been in it, in the weed of it, before I even started this with my co-founders and my business partners, Dre and James. I know you're probably watching here somewhere, but Dre and Ahmad has been great. They've, you know, helped me a lot with a lot of things because I don't know everything and I don't know anything. One of my my founders, Dre, he's also a veteran. And when we started talking about stuff, and I was like, dude, this is this is where I would love to implement this. And then Ahmad comes in the picture. I'm like, dude, you have YP. This is what's happening. Where I think the common thing that we all have is really serving with intention. You serve with intention and your purpose. And people can see through the smoke and mirrors, right? The BS stuff. But once you have your purpose and your mission and your value that you'll add onto people as well as businesses, you'll see what will be successful for you. And it's the ego-ness that will definitely fail a person that is trying to strive for something great.
So we're going to deep dive your company in a little bit, but I want to ask you, Chris, before I forget. So of course, there's always like the challenge that no, not enough like females and people of color in tech. So the question is it the responsibility of tech people to go where the candidate, like the females and people of color are, or is their responsibility to go where the tech people are at?
That's a good question. I think from the clientele side of things, these companies that we have worked with, they came to us. We'll dive deeper later on for the company stuff. But I think if you were trying to fill certain roles and certain things within your organization, why not start within your organization and promote within, right? You have the people there, you have the talent there, but it's also, I don't want to say cheaper, but I'm saying is that you would have a better experience if you had a pulse within your organization, right? Because it's easier to promote within rather than finding another candidate from the outside and they don't know how the culture is in your org, how it is within those walls, or remotely or wherever they're working, right? It would be easier promoting within rather than having someone outside. But if there's the candidate wanting to go within the organization and really learn more about that, it's the responsibility of either the recruiter or the organization at least meet people where they are. Because if you don't meet people where they are, or at least have that set expectation, then how do you know if it'll be a good fit, right? Because here at Access to, we also work for the candidate, but we also work for the clientele. But once that happens together, like we set the expectations so they know, both parties know what's going on and what's happening. There's a transparency between both parties.
Rubelyn, what do you do for fun?
The gym
that you can say out loud in the public.
I like to go on walks. I think walks by the water.
You do a lot of nature stuff, right?
Yeah, because man, I had to learn that the hard way. If you don't take care of your mental health, your physicalness and everything, it really starts to boggle down on you. You feel it. I would just say the very toxic experience that I had experienced in the past is don't drive yourself to the wall and work yourself to the ground and get burnt out. And because it really mentally messes up here, but it also messes up all over your body. Because you can really, really feel it. And I think once I hit that rock bottom, I took the mental health stuff very much serious. And so I don't try to be on my phone when I'm on walks. I like just being by the water and just writing. I like to write. I like poetry. That's how, I met my best friend off Zanga. I don't know. That was like how many years ago, but her and we really bonded off of poetry. So I like poetry.
Do you
I
write
like
any
working out.
poems?
Yeah, I like to just write. I like to journal a lot of journaling. I think that's another outlet that I like to utilize in that space, because when you're so busy and you're so in it as a co-founder, there's just a lot of stuff that keeps going, ongoing. But it's also important to have your support system and have that boundary of when to really like, okay, unplug really quickly, at least give yourself, I don't know, a day, few hours, and to really figure out what's going on and then recoup and have a refreshed mind. Yeah.
And you do a lot of traveling too. Like I know you've been to San Diego, Los Angeles, Las Vegas. Pretty,
Yeah.
pretty like hot, warm and hot, sunny places, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm in LA very often. I have friends out there, really good friends out there. So they're very kind enough for me to just stay there with them and just work out of there, because a few of them are also like they're business owners, and they also work in the gig economy in graphic designing and stuff. And so we just work out of either their place, like their house, or we go to coffee shops, or we just work by the pool. Usually, I call it a workation because we really, literally, but it's like what I think that's the difference. Once you like really love what you do, you take your work everywhere for you, even though the bad conversations that you'll have, but you also learn how to turn that off emotionally. Yeah.
And so, can you talk about how you have two co-founders, right?
Mhm.
Can you talk about how y'all came together and how you decide like who takes care of what, like who has what lanes and how y'all communicate?
Yeah. So, end of when was it? 2018. Yeah, end of 2018. I met DeAndre James. He came into one of our events or something, and he told like he was looking for a team at the time. And then he was looking for a team to really get this off the ground. And then I took a notebook and pen. Old school. I don't want to be on my phone and take notes. I need to write it out because it sticks better. And he told me what his vision was, and I was like, yeah, this is where I'm at. This is you wanting sports, embedding sports into figuring out a community to be on a even level playing field. You're talking about that. And I was like, yeah, I went to Gonzaga. That's a D1 school, like, okay, let's see. How do we do this? And like, I've always been an advocate for employees, candidates. I'm like, hey, will this be a good fit for you if we were to place you? Or this is what, like keeping the morale up in the companies, right? I remember the office management role, the executive assistant role that I had, all different hats in tech that I got into right after undergraduate school. I was like, we got to go on happy hour Fridays, or we had like lunches like every other day or something with the executives, just to really get to know your coworkers. And so I told him that, and he's like, yeah, how do we do this? And then, yeah, we did that. Like, fast forward, we did a tournament, and that was the basketball tournament right in the Jamal Crawford Park in Renton.
I remember when you did
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And then we had, opportunities surrounding the whole court. We had a whole experience that we were doing. We had people that was donating haircuts for free. I remember him. And we had the block party. We had a backpack drive. We had, the laborers, the techs companies there, and while they were watching a basketball tournament, we had the people that weren't playing. They were talking to recruiters, right? Recruiters of companies like, oh, what are you looking for? What are you doing this? It wasn't like your normal basketball league. There was a end goal, and there was an action. There's little deliverable items, actionable items for the party that was involved in the tournament, and also the companies that were there. And so that happened. And then COVID hit. And I was like, dang, we literally had the next year booked. Me and Dre were like, fudge. I was like, I know. How do we do it? And then and then that's when Ahmad came in. because Ahmad and I, we were actually connected on Twitter first, like years. And then we met for coffee and he was telling me about his community, what he has built. He's the founder of YP Seattle, but now it's called YP Communities. He's the founder of that. And so we all pivoted online and I was like, hey, what's going on with this? And then he was telling me companies were going to him about like, do you have a staffing arm yet? Da, 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 da. And I was like, so we all pivoted. We're like, well, there's no, there's no, there's no reason why we shouldn't be together, like together as in like business wise, coalition wise, because you have this network that you have built organically. And then here's access to with this niche of people trying to play sports, but also in the laborers and unions and in tech and trying to get recruited into these companies. Why not meet people where they are? Right. And so we had that happen where Ahmad was like, shoot, okay, let's go. And so that's when the pandemic and everything, right? So we all did all the happy hours online, everything online. We had the career room. That's where access to was. And then, yeah, I think to answer your question of where all of us land, our common ground is to serve the community, the underrepresented, the people that don't have that shot, right? And DeAndre or Dre, I call him Dre. When I call him DeAndre, he thinks he's in, like he gets in trouble. I was like, nah, Dre. When I need to get his attention, I'm like, hey, then I'll do that. But Dre, he's definitely the event planning and like he can get like he's the hustler. He's the go getting. Like he's like, oh, I can get these meetings. Da, 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 da. And then Ahmad, he's also that way, but he's very organized in that sense where we have our CRM we have to set up. Like I have my organization also like I have a background in executive assistant. So of course the calendar management, getting people together, the project management, and all this, we stay in our lanes of organizing and putting our meeting in the middle because we all have our strengths, right? Like for me, I know I can get in front of people and get into rooms that they can't. But once I do get them, reeled in, I have Ahmad and Dre helping me in the back end. Like, hey, can you guys help me with this? Like, Ahmad also has a background in law and finance. So he, contracts and all this stuff, that's Ahmad. And then when it comes to like keeping everyone warm and like leads or anything, it's all of us. Well, not all of us. Usually Dre and I, we keep them at bay or candidates, all this. So we all communicate every day, actually, like literally every day. We're on Slack, we're on text messages, and we're also on the phone. I think we're on the phone 10-15 minute check-ins by like 8:30 in the morning. So speaking of, yeah.
So next question.
Yeah.
They say having co-founders like being married. Is that, can you confirm or deny that? Like, it's like you being married to these two different people?
You know what's funny? I'm going to bring the astrological point of this is because I'm a Sagittarius and I am surrounded by Geminis. They are both Geminis. And I would tell you this much. They're here sometimes. And I'm like, can you come down here? And I need you to come down here. Tell me where's A to Z. But I find myself going like 100 miles per hour and Ahmad has to pull me back sometimes. He's like, okay, but how do you do this? How do you do that? And I'm like, okay, this is how you do this. And I was like, you're right. This is what's happening. I was like, I see the end results. Like we're all end results driven people, but we go our own way of trying to figure out how do we get there. But sometimes we always find a way back to each other and figure out one way that will make everything cohesive.
So what's y'all's process as far as like dealing with disagreements?
Okay. So I haven't really, for me personally, like I know it gets heated and there's pushbacks a lot on some of our ends. we we try to talk it out. We try not to talk over each other. I'll tell you that right now. And then either that or we were like, can you give me like a few minutes or a few seconds, get off camera or do something, and then we come back. And I'm like, okay, this is how you do that. Or we'll just give each other a few moments, and then we'll either call back each other or we'll get back online and we find ways to really communicate once everything settles. I mean, we haven't gotten to a point where we're like wanting to choke each other. Let's knock on wood, because I don't think that'll happen. And so I think if anything, we are at that stage enough. We all trust each other, but we also know that if there's a decision that needs to be made, a business decision, we all talk to each other before making the final decision. Like everyone has a say in that. So say like Dre said yes, Ahmad say yes, but I say no, then we'll have a communication uh talk about like, why are you disagreeing, or why is this right? Like it's never to a point where there's people's egos involved. I'll tell you that right now.
Okay.
They're very humble. Both of them are very humble and very grounded. We're all grounded in our ways, where we've gone through each of our experiences to get to where we are today. That, having the ego and everything and being center of attention is never the point or the cause or anything. Yeah, we all always talk to each other.
So next, talk about your role as the adjunct faculty at, I think it's Northwest University.
Yeah. So at that point, I at one point was applying for a full-time position before, when I left that old organization, because I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next, because I left that organization and then I didn't know what to do, and all these things kept closing, and I was like, I don't know, is this even a thing? Like, what am I supposed to, like, I needed to work, right? And so at the time I applied for a position that was full-time. And then I was like, okay, and I didn't get it. And I was like, okay. So I was, I'm still involved with the dean of the business school and the administration and everything. I still talk to them here and there just to touch base and stuff. And yeah, I get an email and it was like, hey, your name has been coming up a lot through these meetings and stuff. And then they just invited me. My first semester was this January, January to February. And then it was good. And then they invited me back again. This is all online, by the way, so I don't have to go there or anything. So it makes it very easier. But what's cool is that I really get to teach from experience, even though there are textbooks from there. Because the first course that they gave me was undergraduate business school, was the dynamics organizational leadership. So that was one. And then once I got the evaluation back, they're like, hey, we're going to talk to the dean and we want you to come back, teach again. And then I did get that email again saying like, hi, so based on your remarks and everything from all your students and, the faculty here, they want you to teach this course again, which starts on 4th of July till August 21st. And this time it's the entrepreneurial planning, business planning. So I'm like, okay, the first one was the culture of organizational health. This one that I will be teaching in July is really seriously like from ground up of what I'm building with Dre and Ahmad. So I'm like, shoot, I really get to teach from what I'm doing, like literally now. So it's pretty cool.
So when you're teaching, are you channeling your cool auntie Rubelyn or the stern teacher Rubelyn? Which one are you using?
I both. Because this is all online. So when I'm teaching and I'm recording myself, I try to be serious. I'm not a serious person. Like people think I'm serious, but I'm like, No, I only be
No,
serious
you're
when I
not.
need
Yeah,
to.
yeah, yeah,
I was like, I am not.
yeah.
I
I can agree with that. Yeah,
yeah.
you're a fun person.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, I'm not serious. Literally. I'm like, if I have a straight face, is because I'm thinking of stuff. But
Now all these like freshmen and sophomores.
um they are, this one that's coming is actually going to be sophomore and juniors. Yeah, sophomore and junior. The first one was freshman and sophomore.
Now, can you do this? This might you. The answer might be no because of ethics. Can I give you teaching a class? You're like, man, that person is a superstar. Maybe try to recruit them to come work for me.
I think about it all the time and I'm like, but I don't say it
Yeah,
because,
the
I
ethics
might,
and stuff.
I might get in trouble if like I try to recruit them.
So you got to wait till they graduate.
Yeah, pretty much. I think that's the I think the unhidden rule of like I can't poach students to work for me. Unless it's maybe an internship, then I would have to go through the university
Yeah.
and their pipeline and figure out.
Sounds like you have a lot of fun doing it, though.
I am. I do have fun with it. I was saying, once everything slows down, I don't know if it will, but once everything slows down, I would like to probably be full-time professor.
All the students are here in the area across the nation because it's
across
online.
the nation.
Okay.
I think the most furthest student I've had, Indiana, and then New York.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go back to, I think it's called Young Professionals of Seattle.
Yeah.
I can't remember last time. I think Kara Renrich is part of that too.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I haven't seen her for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. So I work with her very heavily too.
Okay.
Yeah. So the hot seat is the other one that I also have, right? And then that's with YP Communities. Kara's the nonprofit consultant that we all work with, and our teammate and volunteer opportunities. We work with Kara a lot.
So when y'all say young professionals, like 21 below, 24 below, or this is just a name I put out there?
It's just no, yeah, it's just a name of out there. Okay. So that's why it used to be Young Professionals of Seattle, but now it's YP Communities because we're pretty much expanding, right? We're here, we're based in Seattle. However, we're also in San Francisco, trying to figure out ways to get into LA because I have my friends out there and figure out that. But we're also in Austin and Denver.
Okay.
So yeah, YP Communities is.
So have you traveled to Denver under the YP dime yet?
No. No, but I have a cousin there. She keeps telling me to visit. I'm like, not when it's snowing. I was like, do you see me going to places where it's snowing? No. Yeah, but actually in Austin, we're going first time with access to. We're going to Afro Tech.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll be there for 5 days in November.
So that's in November?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can have like a booth there, or
we're going to just go for the experience and see, check it out.
You do like what's called guerrilla marketing. You seen her show up and bogart everyone.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll see how it goes. Like, I think that was one of the visions that we had when we have pivoted a lot more in the recruiting space. Is that it's the people of color, right? There, you have your Blacks, you have your Asian Americans, you have your people of color. That's huge. Focusing on that's a big thing for now with companies. But like, I think it's an experience that we should experience. I think is because you're trying to look for people, right? And you have them all in one roof. Like, how are you building these relationships, right?
Yeah, you're gonna love Austin.
Really? Yeah, I'm excited because there's a lot of startups there, I think. So startup city, and I think
Capital Factory, South by Southwest, all the stuff there.
There's all in there. So I'm excited for that. Dre and I are going, so we're good.
Nice.
So yeah.
So next, let's talk about hiring some. So it's like we'll break it down: a hiring manager versus recruiter versus hiring manager versus candidate versus recruiter, right? One thing is like, remember what the economy is. It's hard to get hired, right? It's like everyone like kind of blames everyone else. Like the candidate gets blamed. You're not telling your resume.
Yeah.
Recruiter gets blamed. Oh, you're not entering everyone, right?
Yeah.
One person I don't think gets blamed enough is the hiring manager, right? It's my opinion. Like they'll change the job description over and over again, or they're not responsive, right? Can you talk about some of the responsibilities and accountabilities on all three parts to make the job search better?
Yeah, I think it's a great question actually, because my position where I'm at right now, I've been able to doing the retaining of talent or finding, sourcing, whatever you want to call it, sourcing, and then you're recruiting, right? And you're working also with the clientele. And it's like, okay, what are you looking for candidates, right? And then you're working with the hiring manager. I'm working with the hiring manager, like showing them profiles. I'm like, here's this one.
So what do you do when they say, I want to hire a clone of Tom?
I'm like, you can't clone a person unless we're, I'm like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Like people tell me that they're like, how do we clone you? I was like, you can't clone me. There's only one of me and there's one of Jason only. You can't clone another human being. But what you can do is have, you have a training, like you have your, obviously your book of training and everything, but how a person approaches a problem or how they're trying to find people is their own way. Like I might do it differently, you might do it differently, right? And so how that works is that you kind of have to find a common medium of like, okay, well, what are your non-negotiables as a clientele when you're looking for these people, when we do present you these people. When I say we, recruiters, like our recruiting team, if we find these people, then is this it? Like, what are your soft skills? Like what are you looking for that's not on your resume?
And how do you handle it when like hiring manager changes their mind like every 24 hours? Like I want this, no, I need this, and now I want this, right?
I definitely put a hard stop on that. I'm like, hey, this is what's happening. This is what I have. And if this is what you're wanting to change, then please tell us ahead of time because now you're utilizing time and resources that are sacred. So how do we prevent that from happening? That's when we have the discovery call where I have usually my whole team with me on that call just so they know what the expectations are from the company and the clientele, what they're looking for. And then they have their own notes when they are sourcing people. And when we are talking to candidates that are coming in our pipeline and when we source these people, and, once we have X, Y, and Z amount of people, then we can show them here and like, oh, now we can see this is what I liked about this candidate. This is what I like about this candidate. This is what I'm looking for here. It's kind of like a trial and error because a great example is I'm not going to say the company or anything. It's a executive search that we've been working on, and it was their first time utilizing an agency, and how they didn't know what it was first of like we were trying to figure out what was needed for this candidate that you're trying to find. And I think having the trial and error helped a little bit refine our search for them. And it I think the second time around has helped a lot. And so I get on calls weekly with our clientele, like our whole team, whoever we're working with, we at least 15, 20 minutes um, every week, whether they are a nonprofit, whether they are a huge company. Um, we do our best to be in touch with them or continue to have a little pulse um, in their weekly check-ins with us.
So you might disagree with me on this, but I'm pretty sure you're not. Why do so many people say they're a hiring expert, right? Like, are you really a hiring expert? Like everyone you hire, like went on to have a great career at your company, right? That just drives me bonkers when people say that.
But yeah, like I think everyone has their expertise on stuff, but I don't like unless you are really down to the T of, oh, this is what I've experienced, this is what I have certification on. I don't think, like everyone has their way of expertise. I think that's the other thing, right? Like people are knowing specific topics, specific professions. Yeah, sure. If you've done the experience enough and you've done it, then okay, then sure. I don't like that's for you. Like I don't think it's a bad thing that people are very great at what their profession is or what they think that they would do, right? So I don't know. I have no opinion on that.
So Rubelyn, what do you consistently see candidates doing wrong in the job search?
Um I would say a lot of it has to do with I don't want to say the resume because everyone's resumes can always be improved. But I think the preparation when you're actually having a conversation, you can tell, I can tell if you have been prepped for an interview or if you kind of came in to just
They're just winging it, so to
yeah,
speak.
you're winging it to as to speak. And so I've spoke to a lot of candidates that I'm like, okay, like this is, you can either figure out what you're wanting to do, and it's okay if you don't have that specific roadmap, to to what you're looking for. It's okay, but I would say when you are going to be talking with um, either a talent acquisition or recruiter before the hiring manager is to prepare yourself and research and ask questions that may have an answer from the recruiter that or agency, but at least for the company that you are applying for.
So talk about this. So I think this is a big disconnect. So, like, Jason Cabinets gets laid off or fired, with the case should be. Like, I need a job right now, right? Like right now, I got bills to pay, mortgages, whatever.
Yeah.
But companies hiring, like, okay, someone just left a position. They're not really that much of a here to hire anyone right fast. Okay, they want to go through the process.
Yep.
They'll probably make 2 or 3 people in the company like do extra duties, right? And so I think it's always a disconnect. Is there a way to fix that disconnect, or this is the way it's going to be, you think?
I think when you're saying like you're looking for a position and then you're trying to get to the hiring manager, is that what you're?
Yeah, like I need a job right now, but the company, they have a position. They're gonna like take their time, right? They're gonna go through the process. They're gonna take applications for a week, for a month, do interviews for a month, do phone screens for a month, right?
Yeah.
And the process may be 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
For my process, like I need something like in 2 weeks.
Yeah. I think that's a good question. And I think depending on the company, right? This is what I'm gonna speak from my experience because I was at one point I was like, oh shoot, I need something for my
like,
paying bills.
like I gotta start collecting cans or selling plasma pretty soon, right?
Yeah, and I
Or
really
working McDonald's or something.
exactly, and I have no problem going that route if I needed to, but I think you kind of have to dive into your own your network, like people who like I know you want this and this right away, results right away, but kind of I know that there will be a process, and it's kind of sad to say this is that it comes down to the people, not sad to say this, but it comes down to the people who within where you're trying to go, right? I mean, yeah, it helped me a little bit having the MBA, but at the end of the day, what has helped me, I'm speaking from my experience, is that the people that I know that will be able to vouch for me or let me get in. But that wasn't always the case. Yes, I knew people within that organization and I had my resume there. I had all the experience, but it comes down to the hiring manager of wanting you to be on their team or not wanting you to be on their team.
Yeah, from first experience, like a few years ago, I was a HR director at a local college.
Yeah.
For example, like we would have all these positions open. We easily get 200 resumes per position, right?
Yeah.
It's like you don't have time. When you read through them, you can't think like you want to, right? Because and at one time when we talk about too, everyone has biases, right?
Yeah.
So like me being a veteran, someone who was a veteran, I give them a little boost, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But what would always help with someone new called me, right? Hey, Jason, a friend of mine applied. Can you look for it? Okay, let me look for it. Now, I'm not saying like if that position need a master's degree, this person had a high school diploma, that I know I could do from, right? Yeah. But it's kind of close. If someone calls you, you're gonna kind of give an extra look, right?
Yeah.
And people don't realize that. Another thing I think we mentioned this a little bit before, like resumes. You get 25 different resumes. You get to 25 people, you get 25 different opinions, right?
Yeah.
Only opinion that matters is the hiring manager.
Yeah.
Only way to know what a hiring manager wants is the network, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that in itself, but I think when we're screening for people is like you have them tell you their story of like, yeah, like I said, I mentioned this. I'm like, yeah, there's a resume, but what's not on your resume? I'm interested in what's not on your resume because I can read that. That's cool. But how did you get here? And what made you loop into the next one? And why, well, how did you get here, then here? And where's this gap here and what it is, because that's, I think what's missing is that, yeah, we're all busy. And that's why agencies exist, right? Is because you have people screening people for your positions and we weed out what is exactly a person outside of their resume, right? You see what's happening with them getting to this position. And, sometimes it's not about the degrees, to be quite frank with you. That's our own biases,
Yes.
because sometimes a person may have all the credentials and all the accolades, but they're not even fully there. And I'm like, where's your common sense, bro? Like, come on, man. Like, I see it, like I definitely see it. And you can see who gets handed things. And when it's handed to them rather than a person working for something, they value it very differently. And that's what I've seen that has come in my plate, right? It's not that you're always on survivor mode, but I'm saying it's different. A person that is getting things handed to them when a person is working for something, it's a different feeling, I think.
It is.
Yeah.
Talk about this. Finding a job is not easy. You look for a job, you can probably hear no like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 more times.
Yeah.
What advice do you have on candidates to keep like be mentally tough, like keeping the game, so to speak? And like you might hear no 10 times, the 11th time might be a yes. What's your advice on that?
Yeah. I mean, it just comes back to the beginning of where you were like, never give up. I mean, it takes resiliency and really a tough mentality. It'll boggle you. I'll tell you that right now. It's searching for a job is like a full-time job in itself. And it's like, it will wear on you. There will be a lot of no's, but it really comes down to how do you take those no's and be able to shift your gears of like, shoot, when I'm discouraged, I can't find this. There's always hope, right? There's always hope, and there's always perspective of, yes, you will find something because you are needed somewhere, and adding value to an organization or like just anywhere you go, I think is a big thing, right? My advice to that is really, 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 you just got to keep going and just have faith. I think that's a big thing, is like believe in something, if not at least yourself.
So I think you bring a good point. I think a lot of candidates look for a job, they put like the base of their resumes, but I think a lot of them fail to articulate or show how they're going to bring value to the company. Can you talk
Mhm.
about how they can do a better job of showing the value they're going to bring?
Yeah, so I think there was a job description, like, okay, there's a job description you see. What is their perfect example that you have experienced personally and that you can bring it to the table when you are talking to someone from the company, whether they are the hiring manager, whether they are the recruiter, the coordinator? Find something that will make you stand out from everybody else trying to get their attention or trying to look at their resume. Because I think that in itself is like, hey, stand out, but also give the value add of like, oh, this is what I can do, this is what I've done, and this is what is said within your job description. I think having tangible things and experience will help that, because that's helped me just even having a conversation, right?
So let's suppose someone accepts a job, right? The
Hmm.
interview is great, the company seems great, everything's great, but within 2 weeks they're like, man, they lied to me. This company is not what they said it was going to be.
Yeah.
I'm not doing the job I should be doing. I need to leave. When should someone leave a job? Like, is it 6 months, a year, 2 weeks, as soon as possible?
I mean, if you are in a position in that sense, because I've definitely been there before, I think, really figure out a way to find value within that experience. I mean, you can continue to passively look for experience, right? Or opportunities, because there's endless opportunities. You really just have to really look at it, right? But I think if anything, it's finding the experience within that moment or that organization is like, yeah, it's going to be tough, but if you have to make do with it, unless they really disrespect you in that sense, then I'd say leave. But if there's a way you can find value in that experiment or experience that you're in there within that organization, or at least find one person that you can work with, I'd say, I call it networking, like you network with people at least, or finding value in that. I'd say you're a win in that situation, is because yeah, it might be a bad environment. You have a bad manager. That sucks. I know it really does sucks. But I would say try and stick it out as much as you can, because there's going to be always people that will be difficult to work with. And how do you work around that, and giving headache is that finding ways to really do your job, but also finding other people within the organization that you can lean on, I would say.
Yeah. One thing I want to add, I'm sure Ruben will agree with me. All the stuff we're saying, everyone's economic situation is different, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. So we're just like speaking general broad terms. So
Mhm.
we don't know your economic situation. You might have to get a job at McDonald's. You might
Yeah.
do what you got to do, but we're just talking about general terms right now.
Yeah. Yeah. In general terms, like, yeah. Like if you can stick with it, stick with it. I mean, if not, then, find something else that will fit better for you. I had a friend that just talked to me and was like, yeah, I had this really bad experience. And I was like, okay. And then later on, the next day, she got let go. So, I mean, like you said, everyone has their different um, situations. Everyone's somewhere else in their own journey.
So Ruben, back to you for a minute. I found this somewhere about you too. I can remember what test you took, but it broke you like the 5 things you do well. The first one is the strategy, includer, input, positive, and arranger.
Oh yeah. What is that?
I think it was a liquor part, some kind of, I forgot what it was. Like it's something your strength annex or strength something.
Yeah, strength finder.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is some kind of test you took, or
yeah, I remember it was my first, yeah, it was my first my first tech job, is that they had me take that test because they wanted to see where I was at. It was my manager at the time.
So talk about how strategy is one of your strengths.
When I say strategies, like for me, I'm a huge person that can see results. And like if there's results there and I see it, you have to think outside the box of how you're going to make it work that way. If I see results, I reverse engineer a lot of my things and then strategize around it. And then I don't know everything. I'm not good at math either. So I find people that are great at something, that are more stronger in that sense, that, in general, right? I'm talking about in general, is that you can strategize with the results. Like I said, I'm results driven and I see it and I'm like, how are you going to make this happen? Is that I find people that will be able to help me bring these results in, right? And that also goes into the includer, right? I think hand in hand it works, is that I like to collaborate with a lot, like with people a lot. I like to do things alone, but I also like to have people's input and perspective, because different lenses, different perspective gives different results.
So when you talk strategy, like how long term is that? Like 2 months out, 3 months out, 25,000 years out?
I'd say probably for the year. I would say
Yeah.
a year, right?
Okay.
Right. I think right now there's a huge one of where we're going with access to. Yeah. So I think it's a big one that we're.
And you were talking about include. How about the input one?
Input. Yeah. So for me, like we have a lot of team meetings with with our whole team, but also other like consultants. So we give our own. For me, I like to give input of like, oh, what about this? Little drops here and there. I like to mainly listen because I like to figure out what they do bring to the table, but then after that, it's like, okay, so this is what you're saying. You reiterate it in a way where you figure out how they're thinking and how are we working together, kind of thing. That in itself is very valuable to me, is because people have great ideas. They just need someone to actually listen to them.
And then something like you said, how many people say an idea? Was like I say, I know what you said, but what I heard is different, right? Can we make sure the same thing? I'm on the same page, because I don't think I'm hearing what you actually said.
Yeah, and so I think that's what I'm learning actually from my teammates, Ahmad and Dre, is because Dre says something and then Ahmad is, he slows both of us down. He's like, so let me get this straight. And then he reiterates it again. And there's like, oh yes, that's exactly what we're trying to do. So that's the other way we all work very well together, is that we're all visionaries, but we also know when we have to go back down to earth, kind of thing.
Right? So next one, and this is definitely one of your strengths, positivity, right?
You
like,
have to.
Yeah.
I think you really, really have to, especially where we are now, right? Like, I think there's always something to be grateful for. I think there's always something great to look at, even though there might be things that are happening that are bad. And I just got the news this morning. One of my old coworkers and friend, she passed away from a seizure. So
sorry to hear that.
No, yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I'm just like, wait, what? Is that a joke? And yeah, that in itself, I'm still processing, but I'm like, okay, well, I have this opportunity that I can have a conversation with Jason and have people listen in to like where my head's at, and where sometimes people do go through things. You just really have to be kind. Really be kind to people, because people are going through it.
You never know what they're going through.
You just don't know, right? So people post stuff on social media all the time.
What is it called? I call them the Twitter cowards. Twitter cowards, YouTube cowards.
Whatever you'd like to, people post all these things all the time, but
and they're always anonymous.
That's that, but you just never know what someone is really going through.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I'll say one thing about positivity. If you're dealing with Rubelyn and she's there, has like a stern face or mad at you, you've really messed up, right?
Yeah. Like, no, it really takes a lot for me to get it.
If she's like mad at you, like a stern face yelling at you, I don't know, you've done something really bad, right? Because I've never seen at that level, right?
Yeah, it takes a lot for me to get to even like upset. I'll tell you once, I'll tell you twice. You don't get it the third time, I will throw it back in your face and be like, hey, this is what, I don't know what you want me to do or say, but this is how it really is. So, I mean, I'm very direct, but I'm also trying to work on my delivery of being direct, because words do affect people. I can see that. And
so what I'm hearing you say, you're trying to learn how to tell people you suck without telling them they suck.
I didn't say that. What I'm saying is that there's a way to deliver things in a way where people will actually receive it, not getting hurt or taking it personally. Then that's, I don't know, that's all on you. When I'm trying to say, like, don't, like, I'm trying to give you feedback.
Yes.
So
last one is arranger. To me, it seemed like arranger and include is like kind of the same thing. Or is that different?
I would say so. Arranging wise, like, I always know how to bring people together. That I would say, that's how I would say, like, oh, you're arranging this meeting, I can arrange this for you. Like, you're like pretty much a liaison to things. I find myself in those positions. Yeah, a lot.
So next, talk about your experience of being a first-generation immigrant. Like, how's that affected your lifestyle, your goals in life?
Yeah.
Does it? It's like most people who are immigrants have more drive, more focus, right? Because I know there's been a couple of VCs in the Bay Area. They're public about they prefer to invest in immigrant first-generation immigrants.
Yeah.
Because the drive they have versus like third-generation Americans, right? Can you tell us some about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think for me, I'm going to speak on my behalf because everyone's different. But for myself, I'm a Seattle native, but I understand the Filipino dialects. It's my parents. I grew up in a household where my parents spoke the language a lot to my brother and I. And it really is, I've seen growing up my parents working 2 jobs. Both of them were working 2 jobs just to make sure that my brother and I have a comfortable living situation. And, they came from the Philippines, so it's different than what they have here, right? And I think growing up in that sense, I'm like, okay, yeah, to make ends meet, not to work as hard, they embedded the education part of it because they didn't have that opportunity. They wanted to give that opportunity to my brother and I. And so I was like, okay, cool. And by the time I got to college, right, I was like, oh man, like I've always liked talking to people and meeting people and building relationships with people. And so I was like, oh, marketing's fun too. And I got, that was my first glimpse of business, was in the student store, West Seattle High School. Mr. Schuneman, which is my marketing teacher. I was able to be in charge of all of the operations of everything in our student store in high school. So when it came down to products, ordering products and the scheduling and making sure people were paying on time and all this, I was in charge of that. I was like, oh, I could do this. This is cool. This is actually for real, for real. You know, and I think with that said, is I was like, shoot, what was it? Like, how can we make this work as like, minus the part that I don't want to work for anybody. That was that was a piece of it. But I think I also had early on a mentor that helped me, Brian Frenata. He helped me. He has his own businesses and stuff like that in production. And he helped me through that, like wavering stuff and, clearing stuff out and everything. He helped me with the business side of things. And I think having the resiliency, and the mindset and the never give up mentality, is a big thing. I think you either have it or you don't. That is the short answer to it.
Can you talk some about maybe some of the disadvantages of being an immigrant, like maybe like a racism you had to go through, or like the different problems like that you had to go through?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, so a lot of the times where I did not, I like to be in sweats. I don't like to, I'm like very casual, very simple.
Back to the gym, right?
Yeah, very, very simple. I'll dress up here and there, but I'm very simple, right? You go into places that expect you to dress a certain way or be a certain way, or you have X, Y, and Z designer stuff. None of that. Like for me, I was talking to someone. If he was a banker, it was at a bank. I won't say the bank, but it was at a bank, and then it was one of the big corporation banks. And I came in with sweats, and I'm like, oh yeah, like you're looking for a credit card that will help you obviously build your credit and everything. And they were shying me to the secure one when I knew I had X, Y, and Z. And I've done my research. You do I always do research before
You
doing
knew your
anything.
credit score, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I've already done that. And I've done this. And I was like, why are you pointing me here when I can be going here and I need X, Y, and Z of this? And so I was like, yeah, that in itself, I was like, may I speak to your manager at that point? Because I kept going here when I was wanting to go here when I knew I had the opportunity to go here. And so I think that in itself is huge. Is the way it's really sad the way you are dressed is how you get judged sometimes, and sometimes you have to play the part and have to dress up. I'm like, okay, cool. And then, I just wanted to see if it would be different if I went to the same bank, but I was dressed up, more dressed up and fixed up. Same person also approached me, but in a different light because I was dressed up in a certain way that he or she was used to. And that in itself is their own bias. So, yeah.
So next, why should anyone care about diversity?
That's a good one.
Like, I mean, what's the big deal about? Why should anyone care? Or maybe a hiring manager, regular person in the street, candidate, like, why should anyone care about diversity?
Well, I think, if you have a team that has different experiences and different backgrounds, I think that in itself will make it unique, right? It gives a different outlook of where you're trying to go with your company or your vision of the whole organization. I think it's great to have different thinking. Your mindset is different than mine. Your thinking is different, and how you are wanting to solve this problem is different than how I would like to see it. Like, I think perspective is huge, but I also think that, you don't want an organization full of, I'm just going to say, like, you have your white people. Like, I'm like, now it comes down to specific events, that we've seen in the news and everything. Like, now they're seeing the value add of people of color, of like, hey, these people are as qualified as you are. Like, why won't you give these people a chance? Is it because you don't know them, right? And it comes down to factoring the build of the relationship building part of it is like, how are you going to get to know a person in your organization if you're not giving the time and day or willingness to 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 give them a chance? I think that's a big thing, is that not even now that the whole diversity buzzword thing is going around and thing, it's a big thing. It's always been a huge thing. Is just it has been blanketed up, in the in I think I would say in the Boys and Girls Club of like certain Ivy League schools, certain organizations, but I think it's important to have a diverse staff, not just because you're a diverse Asian staff, but I think having different experiences, different walks of life, and how people think is a very powerful result. Is how I see it.
Do you think most people like get understand diversity? What I mean is like, I think there's a lot of organizations out there. Feel free to disagree. Like a lot of people out there, like we're diverse, but in reality, they're like pro their demographic, right?
Yeah.
They're pro Asian, they're pro Black, they're pro white male, they're pro Latinx, whatever verb you want to use. They're pro that. So there's nothing wrong with it. But if you're pro that, are you really diverse? Are you really for diversity?
Yeah, and I think that it doesn't just stop in the race card. I think it really comes down now to the equity piece of it. It's like, are you paying your people the right amount that they should be being paid? So say there's, it comes down to the gap wages of a woman and a man being in the same company. Might be a different job title, but they're essentially doing the same thing. Was like, how is that diverse in that? How are you as an organization giving the equity piece to both parties, right? I'm like, okay, yeah, you might have this and I might have this, but at the end of the day, how come you're paying him more than me? I think that's also part of the diversity conversation that people should have in their organizations, because even though you have percentage wise of people in your organization that are diverse, that you're doing diverse hires, but are you actually giving them the specific amount that they are owed, right? Like, sometimes people aren't even getting paid what they should be getting paid for what they are doing in the organization.
Yeah, and I think most stats show that the more diverse your company is, the organization, the more like everything gets better. Like profit gets better, ROI gets better. Like stats prove over and over again, like the business case for being diverse.
Yeah, I think so. I've seen that, and I've seen that happen firsthand. I think with friends that have their own companies, and I'm like, oh, you just didn't hire X, Y, and Z race, but you also hired from here and you hired from here, but you also seen the productivity go up twice as high, and the bottom line comes back even more so different, like more so, more on your ROI, I would say. Yeah.
So the pay gap, are you? And don't answer. You don't want to, but are you seeing like companies are actually like purposely screwing people over by paying them differently, or they're making honest mistakes, or is it they don't know what they don't know?
I've seen a little bit of everything. But I also, as an agency, right, we advocate for candidates a lot, because I'm like, hey, why wouldn't you pay this person's like work of like what they're worth of their not even their experience, but also their what they're bringing you, right? Alone in itself, I've seen, I'd say a friend of mine, he's an engineer, but he was also doing 5 different people's jobs. And so, he was doing everything else and he came back to management. He's like, this is what I've been doing. I'm getting only paid this, but this is what the market value is research. I mean, you do your research, right? Do your research and this is what's happening. And you present it in a way where you're not attacking, I mean, there's ways you can do it, right? And I think with that said, it's there's a fine line between making sure you're paying equally this person for what they are doing within your organization rather than just getting free labor.
So have you seen this? I know this is out there, articles out there, stats show that, for example, I use me and you go get a job together, right?
Yeah.
Doing the same thing. We'll say we're doing social media market management, right? We get the same, pay the same job, whatever. They both offer $60,000. Stats show that you're gonna say thank you very much. Stats show I'm gonna go say, hey, I'm worth more than that. I get raised to 70,000, and so I'm 70,000, you're 60,000 because you didn't negotiate. And then the next year we will get 10% raise, so it keeps on getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
And follow on, I see stats will show that I'm Jason. Hey, boss, I can't work at a time for 6 months. I need a raise.
Yeah.
They might say yes, and where you're gonna be like, you might have closed the deal that raised like increase in revenue like $20 million.
Yeah.
Oh, I just did my job. Are you seeing that out there? Like the stats are showing that, or is that like a myth?
I've definitely seen that. I've seen it, and it's like, why not? Why wouldn't you ask for that specific, negotiation? I think now what I know now, then if I knew what I knew now from before, I definitely would have asked for my. I mean, the worst case scenario is that they would say no.
Yeah, and I've seen arguments for people say, well, quote unquote, train females up, like don't ask. People put that, well, no, they shouldn't have to ask. The managers like automatically give to them.
Yeah.
I know one company, a few of them are like, they don't even negotiate, right? There's like, this is your offer, is fair market value. Like, we hired a social media manager in Seattle for this size company. This is a range.
Yeah.
No negotiation, right?
Yeah. I've seen that too. And I'm like, okay, well, then I don't know if you're if we're the right fit at that point, right? Because if there's no room for growth, I think some people value their personal growth and their professional growth heavily as much as the dollar amount, right? And then if that's the case, then I think some people they find places that will value them more for what they are doing. Because I think productivity goes up. This is what I've seen. Productivity goes up once you do appreciate the people that you work with and that are doing their due diligence in their own job, because sometimes it goes a long way. I think saying you appreciate the people that are working with you, because why not? Who wouldn't hurt from that? Like, who wouldn't like just really feel great about doing a good job within the organization?
So, Rubelyn, diversity in tech has been a big thing for a long time, right?
Mm.
But from your point of view, is it getting any better? Because it seems like it's just the same. Like nothing gets better. Like people talk the talk. What's it called? The performative measures. Talk the game. They talk the talk, don't walk the walk.
Yeah.
Does it, from your point of view, is anything getting better?
I would see. I think there's a lot of work to do. I'll tell you that right now. Like, it's little by little, but there's definitely a lot of work to do in that sense, right? Because it really does start with your leadership team of wanting a change, right? It trickles down. It really starts from here, then it also really goes down to boots on the ground. Because if you're up here, you don't really see what's going down here, then how would you know, right? Unless you up top have these conversations with your hiring managers that are hiring people. Like, how can you get these people, like these types, not these types of people, that's the wrong word. How do you get how do you get people in the door if it's a different experience from here, but it's also a different experience and perspective when you're up here?
Also, like too, like all these companies, big companies, small companies, they're hiring like diversity, inclusion officer, DI officer. What are term you want to use, right? But like, if you want to make a difference, why they're working for anyone else except the CEO, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're diversity person is working for the CFO or for HR, whatever, like, what message does that send, right? Unless they're working for the CEO, I don't know if that sends the right message to the company.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to wanting to change, right? The organization, like sometimes people or organizations don't want to change because they've seen it in one way for so long, but sometimes that way of thinking and that way of like documentation and procedures and everything is way different than what's happening in the world today. And what that said is that sometimes you have to adapt. You have to keep going with the ebbs and the flows. Otherwise, you're going to just be left behind, right? And it's like sometimes the old school way is not the best way, right? Because you either swim and swim or sink or swim, or you adapt in ways of what's happening in the technology world, and people how they're learning. Because Dre, Ahmad, and I talk about this all the time. People are learning in different ways. We're not learning how you or myself, how we were learning back then. That was like no 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 no. You go 1 to 10. Nowadays, how are you finding people? You're finding them in networks. You're finding people like in pods. I would say in pods, right?
That's a good
Like
good
you,
analogy.
you know what I'm saying? Yang? You're finding them in pods of like people playing video games. How I'm saying this is, I'm going to go back to how I have met so many people in different times of my life is AOL chat. I found a really good friend of mine who now used to work for Sony, graphic designer for Sony and all the video games. But he and I started off at the chat room. That's how he and I have met. And we became really good friends. And then you have people that are in these chat rooms that are playing video games. They're talking to other people wherever in the dang world where they are. But I mean, I think that's how people learn is that they can find people from all over the dang world, but they learn differently. They'll learn something from them that may not even be here in the United States. You know what I mean? It's like it's different. Like the learning process and learning curve now is, I think, different, I'd say.
Can a company ever be 100% diverse? Or is that an unreachable goal?
It depends on how you are defining in the organization of this diverse, right? I would say, yeah, you 100% an organization can have different races in within their organization, but it also comes down to the leadership. It starts with the leadership, I think, is that you're wanting people of color in your organization, is that then pay the people that are the person of color that will be the duty, right? Like a lot of people come, they see me, myself, and Amon. They're like, "Whoa, here's an agency that is really doing the talk." And it's like, yeah, is because you see me, a female, a woman of color. I'm Filipino, first gen. I have two Black co-founders with me. I was like, yeah, of course you're gonna have, you're gonna have to start here and then foundationally lay the ground, but also hire intentionally of like what you were looking for. And it may not have, I may not even have the same background as you are in your walk of life. Say, a person may not even have a degree, but that person may have much more street smarts than another person that may have a degree and have little bit of street smarts, right? I think there's the balance of it. And I think a company can reach that way if they're willing to change certain processes,
Let,
I'd say.
let's talk about this. So instead of instead of staying the typical 20 white guys, let's change the 20. Suppose it come to 20 white females, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, oh, man, we have 20 white females. We've messed up. We have no diverse people. We said this earlier. What would you advise to them to start doing diverse hiring and bring people on board? One thing people realize, like, you have 20 white females. How are you going to get, like a person of color come work for you, right? Or a Hispanic female, like,
Yeah.
because the culture is already there, right? So how
Yeah.
do you advise them? They messed up. They didn't do it intentionally. Just, they hired their friends, hired people they knew. They're at 20 people. And now they're going to push back from investors, whatever. Your company's not diverse. What's your advice to them? Like, get back on board and do the diverse thing, so to speak.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, first, the humility part of it, the humility piece of it, like admitting and acknowledging that you're wrong. That's fun, one. And I'd say, seek for help. Like people that are, there's a lot of organizations that will do these workshops and everything. Yeah, they're doing the workshops, but also don't go cheap on these people that are willing to come in and consult, pay them for their time and, you know, get advice from them is because like you won't have the same experience as a person of color because your life is different than a person of color's life, right? Everyone's experience is different. So I'd say first acknowledge that you were wrong and humility is the big thing. And then humble yourself enough to ask the experts that are in the field of hiring or whoever looking for these diverse pipelines or talents, right? And figure out a strategy and way want to how they would find the people of color. I mean, my network might be different than your network. So I think that in itself is that it's okay to ask for help and just admitting that you're wrong and move forward and find a way to strategize with that.
So, Rubelyn, you do a podcast called the Hot Seat Fireside Chat, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So for me, it's a big thing of being able to find, like, have people that are in positions that are of influence, like an executive or a decision maker, or at least a senior person, or people that have their own businesses and they have a following and everything. It's big for me to find out who these people are outside of just their profession. Like they can talk about their company, they can talk about their organization, but at the end of the day, a human being with XYZ title is just a human being.
And how long have you been doing the podcast?
I'd say about a year. Over a year. I don't know. I lost track of time, man. Yeah. It used to be in person, but it's now yeah, all online for now.
And you got Dr. Cheryl Ingram going to be a guest pretty soon, right?
Yes, she is. She's tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yes, yes.
So I know you're gonna have a great talk about diversity in that podcast.
We're gonna talk about diversity. We're gonna talk about what she's up to and her mentorship and her companies, her organizations.
She's doing a lot of big things. Like, yeah, I know I think she just hired a CEO or something like that. Or
yeah, she has a Black CEO that she has hired for diversity, and then she has inclusology. She just closed funding for. And then she also has a production company.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah,
maybe I did. Maybe I just forgot about it.
Yeah,
I know she's do a lot of filming and stuff.
Mm-hmm. So she has that. She has that she's back and forth in LA as well as Omaha.
Yeah,
because that's where
I know she heard and got out of Seattle.
Oh gosh, I know that. Yeah.
Yeah, she said Seattle is the place for her.
Yeah, she told me that too, and I was like, oh, okay. Well, a few times that I'm in LA, sometimes I do come and see her when I have the chance to. We hang out. We're homies. We're friends.
Yeah, she's definitely good people.
She is good people. Yeah, I'm excited to have her there on the hot seat tomorrow because she just recently was featured also in Essence and LA. I think the LA Times. I think for her business for inclusology.
Nice.
Yeah, so she's doing it. She's doing it.
So how long is your podcast?
It's usually an hour and a half. I'd say.
So what do you mean? How see you you ask them like all these fast fire questions, bam, 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 bam.
Yes and no. Yes, of like questions of like, stuff that is detached from their organization, them as a human being, like strictly as a human being, right?
So tomorrow we're going to find out about the real Dr. Cheryl Ingram.
Yeah, that she's always been real. Like it is what it is. Like,
yeah,
what
she's
you
definitely
see,
real.
Yeah, she'll tell you how it is, and she does not shy from those conversations. And I admire her for that, is because she's like,
yeah, I know one thing. She is no joke on social media, right?
Oh no,
like she's like. Yeah, she doesn't.
I know.
She gives no F's.
No, at all. Like I was able to, when she was here, she had the interview with GeekWire with Tom. I was actually with her. I drove her to GeekWire's office and I was with her in that studio, and it was a good conversation. I got to find that podcast and I'll post it up on my LinkedIn as well. But it was a good conversation that Tom and her.
Yeah, she definitely calls people out. Like,
if you're
not going to do the work, don't waste my time. I'm paraphrasing what she says all the time. If you hire me, you're not going to do the work. Don't even waste my time. Something like that. She says.
Yeah, I mean, why not? Why wouldn't you? I mean, I think that goes for any organization. Also, is like, why wouldn't you get paid or anything for the work that you're going to be doing? I think that's the thing that I'm starting to see is like, okay, yeah, I can do this search for you now. Is like, but are you going to pay us?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, I mean, I think we're at a point now with access to is like, yeah, you're wanting this. I'm like, okay, so pay up for X, Y, and Z. So
talk about how you came with the name the company came to be. Like, is there any meaning behind that?
I'd say so it used to be Access Net, but then it was moved to Access and then the number 2. So how we came about that was like, okay, access to opportunity, access to the laborers, access to the unions, access to the academia. And it's really how you want to fill in the blank is how we really, no pun intended, right? Access to opportunity. So, I mean, yeah, I think that in itself.
Do y'all have a specific industry you work with? Like any kind of industry you focus on, or all comers, so to speak?
No, I think we've, have gone with tech companies. We've gone with construction a lot right now. A lot of construction companies within Seattle. but I also have tech companies that come knocking on our door. And we also have people that are looking for laborers and project managers, executives. Executive search is what we've kind of have gone in our lap. We've worked with a nonprofit here in Seattle that we just hired their chief development officer. And then we worked with a construction company that we hired their director of IT. And then now we have another construction company we're working with their PMs and their senior project executives.
So the construction companies, are you hiring the actual construction workers too, or just the high level executives?
Both.
So is there a difference when you're doing the hiring process for, like, we'll say, like, white collar people versus blue collar people, so to speak?
Definitely a wide variety. Yes, I would say it's different, but it's also that's where I lean on with Dre, who has the experience more in the industry of unions and laborers. Um, that's where I'm learning from him because as well as the unions, because I never was exposed to that because I know my mom was in a union. She worked in healthcare for 31 years at Swedish Hospital. So that was a big thing. That was the only thing that I knew of unions. Everything else, I'm like, oh, teachers are unions. I never knew of really. So I never
Yeah,
have
they have
been.
they're probably the most powerful union in the world. Those teacher unions.
Yes, yes, they are. Um, yeah. So I'm starting to get exposed to the different types of unions and the laws of hiring these different positions. We work with a lot of the Teamsters here in Tequila. So yeah, a lot of that I'm still trying to learn and wrap my mind around that.
What's y'all's business model? Is like, flat fee, contingency fee,
Yeah.
percentage up front? Like, what's the business model y'all use?
Yeah, that's a good question. So with Access to, we do, the contingency fee. We have the flat fee. We also have the consulting fee up front sometimes, and then the rest is after finding the candidate that's placed.
And does the candidate have to stay in the job a certain amount of days or months before you get your money, or you have to give a refund if they quit after a certain number of days, or once you place them, that's it?
Yeah, in certain organizations, yes. But we also, we're so um invested in the whole process of like the candidate experience and the clientele experience is that after we hire these people that are when I say hire, when we place these people within their organization, the one thing that we do differently is we have the 30, 60, 90 rule. Like we continue to touch base with the candidate and have that relationship with them. We continue to have relationships with their clientels within the next 30, 60, 90 days of how their candidates are doing that are onboarded from us. So I think that in itself is what I pride in ourselves in, is because we really are embedded within the process in itself.
Rubelyn, how do you vet your candidates?
How do we vet them?
Yeah.
We have obviously we have our questionnaires, but we also get to know them as a person, right? Because in order for a match to even happen, like, yeah, a person can check off all the boxes. What if they're like not even what you're looking for, or what it's not even the organization they're wanting to be in, right? Is that we get to know them first, right? We really, really get to know the candidates and really strip down all of whatever else that they might have in their resume. And then after that, we also talk to the clientele, what they're looking for. And I think having that an experience for both parties and having the expectations and conversations with the clientele of what they are looking or expecting and having the weekly check-ins, I think that's what helps us hold them accountable as well as us holding ourselves accountable when we do have these candidate placements and
So you vet the candidates and the customers, right? And the clients,
yes,
right?
yes, yes. So
Um,
both.
so next, who is your perfect customer?
That's a good question. Our perfect
Yeah.
customer.
Obviously one that pays a lot.
Oh yeah, that's one. But we also, it's not just we. I know for a fact we don't just look at clientele just for opportunities of recruiting. Like, well, how else can we provide our service and values? It's like, one is, how can we partner with you for an event? How can we partner with you in, these certification programs? Or how can we have you be part of the nonprofit? So the other thing that Access to has is the YP Communities, which is a nonprofit. We work with United King Way very heavily, one of our partners there. And so I think having those certain things in place in service of value is that we offer more than just the recruitment services. Before, outside of the payroll services, we have the event planning experience. I can think of a big one that we have coming up in August. It's the HBCU Combine, the 3-on-3 basketball tournament, and the career fair in the Auburn Outlet Collection in the Field House. We have these people that are coming here for this combine experience, but we also have a lot of organizations coming up to look for their candidates, their candidate match and stuff. And we also have people coming for the basketball tournament. But also, while that is happening, bring their resumes and figure out ways like, how can we have that prep between the employer, like future employers, and your future employees. It's like us as Access, who's being that liaison and coaching these people that are going to be coming through, either whether they're participating in the 3-on-3 tournament also, or the career fair. Like, if they're looking for opportunities, then yeah, why not go there, be a part of that, and have a block party, like you're giving your backpack, like backpack giveaways like we did, back then. And so there's a lot that's going into this big event that we're doing here in August.
And Noni, you're probably planning it right now, aren't you?
Oh yeah, we were planning this since last year. Like, we had all the pieces and everything. It's just now it's like go 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 go.
So Rubelyn, like a lot of people, you're very busy, right?
Yeah.
But talk about what you do to instead of just being busy, to being productive. Everyone's busy. Very few of us are productive. What steps do you do to make sure you're not just busy, but you're actually being productive?
Yeah, I know what my sweet spots are. Like, when I say sweet spots, I say time. Like, I know what time, the most times I'm most productive. And then I incorporate breaks in there. Like, I know I'm most productive from 10 a.m. till about 2:30 or 3. But within that time frame, I also incorporate maybe 20, 30 minutes of walking, or away from screen time, and hang out with my nieces, if anything, or just really walk by the water and give myself a break there, and then go back to work. But I also don't do any work after 8 or 9
PM, right?
Yeah. Before, I just kept going, but I learned my lesson big time. And I think also that I'm learning now with my two founders is that we all respect each other's boundaries. Unless there's an emergency, then okay. But other than that, we all respect each other's boundaries. And that I really appreciate both of them for, because they're both, one's a new dad, Ahmad's a new dad. Dre has 2 toddlers. And they have their families and everything too. And I obviously I take care of my family also, right? I'm big on family. That's a big thing. That's what I enjoy, is my being around my family.
Rubelyn, how do you do your calendar every day? Like, do you just wake up and you wing it, or like do you do 30-minute space between each meetings? Like, how do you make sure you control your calendar and your calendar does not control you?
Yeah, that used to be my thing. Oh my gosh. Yes. That experience taught me a lot. I would say I wake up around 5:30, 6 a.m. I have to start my day with a quiet mind. Otherwise, my mind is all chaotic.
The monkey mind takes over.
Yeah. I'm like, okay. So I wake up early and I literally lay in bed. Probably about Dr. Cheryl Ingram also taught me this too. Because she's like, you have to figure out a way to meditate or control your thoughts. Because there's just too many things that can go on that will get to you. I was like, okay. So I started waking up like around 5:30 a.m., 6 a.m. And I just lay there for about 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes at most and just zen out. Literally lay there and just say my gratitude. I'll wake up. I'm not wake up. I'll sit up. I'll sit up and I'll write out. I write out a lot of my things and prioritize a lot of things that I needs to be done. And then I'll do my busy work from, I don't know, from 9 to 11. I'll have my busy work sometimes, or I try to push front load all my meetings in the morning. And then from 12 to 3 or 12 to 4, that's when I do all my busy work or my calls.
And do you work 7 days a week, or you take
no? I used to. No, definitely no. Tuesday to Thursday is definitely a lot of the work stuff. And then Mondays, we do have a few meetings, but I have the whole week planned out. And then Fridays, we usually don't do meetings and we're try to cut off everything by 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And then we all catch up, me, Dre, and Ahmad, figure out where we are with projects throughout the week, what needs to be done and what's pressing. And then Saturday, sometimes I work a few hours, but the rest of Saturday after like 12, I don't work after 12. If I don't work in the morning, then I work in the evenings, maybe about an hour, hour and a half at most. Sundays for sure I take off. But in the evening time on Sundays, I take I take time for myself and decompress, and then I prep for my week.
So it's you and your two co-founders. Does anyone else work for the company?
For it's two of us, all three of us. And right now we're in the process of onboarding someone to help all of us.
So talk about your hiring process for this person. Like, how did you bring this person on? What's your own internal hiring process?
Yeah. So obviously we have we have the job description, the job description, the very casual interview. I'm very, trying to get where their head's at and make sure that, it's aligned with our mission or our vision, right? With the company, because a person can come in and do the job. That's great. But a person that has the vision and the patience, the resiliency, and seeing where this can go, that's very important to all three of us. Is like be able to have the process there, but also take it your own. And how do you make it work on your own sense? We don't expect you to have it X, Y, and Z way, right? I'm like a cookie cutter way, because it's not. It's really not like that. Like, yeah, I can give you all the processes, but how you land these candidates or how you land these clientele is different than how I would land it and how Dre and Ahmad would land it, right? Everyone has their process, but at the same time, it's like, can you produce the results and what the expectations are? And at minimum, what can you do? Like, right? So I think within that process of us interviewing internally, we have our expectations of like, oh, this person has this. Oh, this person, is willing to learn this. Like you can learn recruiting all you want, but are you going to have that drive and that sense of purpose of helping a person's life? Because I think success is when you're able to have a plant seeded in a person's mind and you see them with that seed that has been planted by you and having them soar and see where they have started and how much they grow. Shoot, man, that to me is already success. Is like you're able to see the impact. I think all three of us, why we get along so very well and so compassionate, like very compassionate about this organization, is because we want to see how much impact we can do with the next generation. Organizations come in all the time. They ask us, "Oh, we need to recruit younger." I'm like, that's our niche as Access to, is like, yeah, even the level playing field, and that's where sports comes in. That's how our niche comes in, is right. It's like, yeah, you have your sporting events, but wait, you have people that are coming in that will also be able to help with the recruiting process and, making sure your resume is up to date and having things like the whole experience there.
And that plays into your, like what you like to do, like the high school mentoring, the college mentoring, that plays in all of that too.
Yeah. I've always enjoyed being able to mentor people that either are younger than me, or I enjoy mentoring people that are older than me. You know, they ask me things and I'm like, shoot, if I can be a sponge and learn from you, how can I, yeah. Like I like to listen, you know. You really, really listen and really find the answers that you are looking for is when you're listening to people.
So Rubelyn, you already talked about the sun, but go into more detail about your own entrepreneurial journey.
Mm. How it came about. Um, so I was like, you know, I had this fire inside of me. I'm like, okay, what would it be like to run an organization, you know, and have it your own? Because at this point where I was at leaving an organization at that time, I've seen how a business operates. I've seen like, oh, how I put it, how I learned this is because I used to work at a dealership, the Honda and Toyota dealership, Miller Nicholson organization owned. And I want, like, I've always been customer facing. You know, you got along with people, and you know, you want to be greeted by a friendly person, not a person
Yeah.
that's not gonna smile. And I'm like, okay, cool. I only work there during the weekends, and you know, I asked my manager at the time. I was like, hey, is there a way I can uh, just go into the office just to see what it's like after buying a car. What, like, after, because I've seen the whole experience of buying a car and everything. Then you go into the office, there's a whole machine that's operating after that car is sold. And you know, it goes to finance. Okay, what happens to finance? Then it has to go to the registration. Then okay, then it goes to accounts payables, then you count receivables. Then you have people that are like reaching for money, or they have to process the whole paperwork and stuff. You know, you see the whole operations. And my manager at the time, she was like, okay, but I don't have anything that you can sit at the desk. And I was like, okay, that's fine. She's like, do you mind filing? I was like, no, I don't. And like, I just wanted to be exposed to it. And that's how I was like, shoot, this is easy. Not really. But like, you know, in a way where it's like, that's where it comes down to again, like I can see the results. You know, once I saw the results of like, this is the machine behind the results of selling a car, then okay, how do we do this? The blueprints is the same. It's the same steps, right? If you're starting a business, you get your business license, you have this, you need your basic functions, you need your HR, you need your finance, you need to be able to protect yourself legally and everything. And I'm like, okay, like, yeah, I have a business degree, but I also am not an expert in all of that. And that's where I was seeking out people that knew more stuff in that field, because I knew overall I had the bigger picture in mind, and I just knew how to put the pieces together. And I think in that sense where I was able to have the executive assistant background, and I got to meet people who I needed to meet. You know, that you have your decision makers, and I'm like, oh, they're just human beings, you know. And then I have that, and then you have the people that are wanting to your service. Then I'm like, okay, so you have your customers. Take care of your customers. The customers will take care of you, right? And this part of it where I started growing more and more in that sense, where it was like the experience of customer service and all this, it was more in the candidate experience. How do we give these candidates the experience that they won't forget, or as well as the clientele experience, right? And I'm like, oh, it's the same blueprint, except now you're really dealing with human beings, you know? And I think that me working with recruiters and me being ghosted by recruiters and all that, I didn't want that to happen with candidates, because I knew the experience of what it was like not to get a return call, or when you're chasing people. And I was able to emphasize, empathize that experience with them. Like I know what it's like. And so, you know, you try and give them the experience that you can, the best that you can. The same thing with the clientele part. So,
can you talk about this? How like so many people don't realize that no one really knows what they're doing right. Everyone's still trying to figure this out right. Like people like fake to find out what I'm doing. Like, no, you don't. Like, you know, they talk about adulting, right? Or trying to figure stuff out. Like everyone's like still figuring stuff out, right? And
yeah.
I think the sooner you realize that, the more people realize that, the better the world would be, I think.
Oh my goodness. Yes. No one, not everyone knows what they're doing at all. Everyone is learning at some point, regardless of where they are going in their journey of either starting their business or their job search. There's always something to learn. And if you're willing to learn and be coachable and willing to be open to new experiences, then the easier it will be. Because I think once you have that set expectation, like, oh, I only want this title, or I only want this X, Y, and Z. How come this is every organization is going to be different with that same title? How they do things is going to be different than the other organization you were a part of. And I think the key to that is you brought it up. You just hit it in the nail is that not everyone knows what they're doing. They may look like they know what they're doing. I don't know what I'm doing sometimes. But you kind of have to figure out a way to continue to learn because once you have your toolbox and you learn specific things and you're stuck in your own ways, then that's when you stop growing. I think you have to continue to grow as an individual, but also an organization. But before that even happens, is that you as a person have to accept that there will always be growth moments within your stepping stone. Yeah, people see like, oh, you've made it, you're doing it. I was like, yeah, but there's always a learning. There's always something to learn, whether it's from you, whether it's from Dre and Ahmad, or whoever you're working with consistently. There's always something to learn.
One thing is like the people who do know what they're doing, it's like they have big time imposter syndrome, right? Because it's an example I use. I talked about this on other podcasts. Like Sunu Lee, she won the gold medal. She's does genetics in Auburn University.
Yeah.
She did. I saw a story where she said that right after she won the gold medal, she had imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Like she had it because Simone Biles didn't participate. So her mind, she only got the gold medal because Simone Biles didn't participate. And the person's like, but even that's the case, you still won the silver.
Yeah.
And but she didn't have, but her mind, like, imposter syndrome. And people like us, like, you won the freaking gold medal
Yeah.
of Olympics, like overall, like number one gold medal in the gymnastics you won.
Yeah.
And you have imposter syndrome. Like, what hope does anyone else have, right?
Exactly. I think what happens is that everyone's a human being, regardless of what your profession is or whatever it is. I think we always put people on a pedestal. I got to meet, yeah, Meta World Peace. He's cool. Yeah, but it's also at the end of the day.
Unless they're playing the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah, I know. We'll figure out that one. But, I think we put people on a pedestal and people forget people are human beings also. First and foremost, people have emotions. I think who's that quarterback that just passed away I think from
Dwayne Haskins, got hit on the highway. Yeah.
Yeah. So that in itself, and it's like people forget that people are human beings. I mean, regardless of whatever you do, that's what I say is that I don't care if I get to meet these people, because you strip off everything that they're doing. They're human beings. They have a heart that's beating like yours and mine. They have emotions like you and I do, but they also figured out a way to master these emotions and your thoughts. And that's why you have your coaches. I have mentors in my corner. I have my business coaches. I have my executive coaches, but I also now have started seeing a therapist. I think there are things that are very real in a person's life that makes them really human and not just what they are doing their day to day.
So you bring a good point. Like as an entrepreneur, small business owner, you need advisors, you need coaches, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I seem like I get like these 10,000 emails or LinkedIn messages from coaches, right? I want to be a coach. Like, who are you, right? And a lot of them don't give the best advice. What advice do you have to entrepreneurs or startup people or small business owners to find the right coach, right, whatever mentor for them, right? And how to like kind of like go through all the noise that's out there.
Yeah, I think, can you be this person's friend? I think, can they see you for who you are as a person and not just your profession and what you do in guiding of life and everything? Can this person really be that guidance or that voice in your head? Yeah, I think that when people are trying to get in, yeah, like you said, people are trying to trying to get to you, getting this, and it's the same pitch and everything else. What really gets to me, I'm going to talk about my advice, my experience and my advice when people are trying to get me to respond to them, is that I'm like, how are you different than other people when you're trying to give me these advice? And like, can you give me an example? Can you figure out a way that humanizes these experiences, like, because it gets so blended with the noise because everyone's trying to get something, or you're opportunistic or whatever it is that really you really get to know the person. It's like dating. I think so. I I'd say dating, like finding the right therapist for you, I think is you really have to get to know them really, and if it's the right fit for you or it's the right fit for them, I think is it comes down to, can you really have a professional relationship with this person that's going to be guiding you through experiences or talking you through certain things. So that's my advice, is being able to see this person as a guide, but also, can you see this person as a friend? Will this person be there long term? Are you able to see this person long term? That's from my experience.
Rubelyn, so you already talked about your company some. Like, can you go into more detail about how the company got started, what y'all focus on right now, and what the big picture vision is for the company moving forward?
Yeah, and that's a great question. So I think how we all started, I touched on it a little bit, where Dre came looking for a team at one point. This is where I was at another organization. I took my pen and paper, and he was talking about everything that he was talking about with sports, the recruitment, and the youth, and recruiting younger, right? And I'm like, huh, that's an interest. I was like, me and my educational background, I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. Like, yeah, if you're wanting to recruit younger, you have to be able to find a way to connect with them, have a bridge. And I think that started it off already, where it's like, okay, you have a league that's happening, basketball leagues, any kind of sporting leagues we can have, right? And then surround them with the opportunity. And when I say opportunity, I say we have so many companies here in Seattle, but how come they're not down in like Kent or down south or anything?
I can tell you why. Because most people in Seattle, they think anything south of the airport is Mexico.
But I'm saying was that you're wanting untapped talent. That's where your untapped talent is. And like, okay, well, that's where it comes down to again. There's like, you got to meet people where they are. You can't have it there.
Yeah.
Our resources down here in Seattle is way different than the one in down south.
Tacoma has like 4 or 5 colleges in the area, right?
Yeah. It's just very different when it comes down to the resources, like it's different because I see where it's getting allocated. We see the east side that is getting more than what's happening down south. And then these companies are always asking, where can we get these talent that is not there? I was like, dude, you're not looking. You're not looking because you're stuck in your ways where you're wanting. And so anyway, so you got me. Whew, okay, let's go. So that's how we started. Dre came. I, was taking notes, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'm all in. After I left this old organization I was at, and I was trying to figure out what the hell was my next thing to do. And I was like, okay, Dre, this is, I talked to him. I was like, this is what I would like. And he's like, okay. And we agreed to it. And we started figuring out, like, we had everything there. And then that's when Ahmad came in. It was because, we had to pivot virtually. And that's where YP communities came in, right? And so I was like, okay, that's where we all wanted to go all in with the staffing part, is because that specific, like his pipeline and his community he has built, YP has built, was continuously asking for a firm, an agency firm to do staffing agency. Oh, can you find me candidates? And that's where Access 2 came. So it really started with the event planning part of the leagues, of like basketball leagues. We've done, ping pong. We've done, we were supposed to do something with soccer, then COVID hit, right? But being able to combine career fairs and sporting events, and then that way figuring out your pipeline's getting younger. So that's where you're looking. You're looking for high schools and up, right? And so how do we do that? Is that, yeah, sporting events and leagues in itself, and essentially removing the four traditional interview rooms and really seeing what it's like to see this person without seeing their resume first. And I think that in itself is where we are as a niche as access to, is that being able to have these sporting events, but yet you have these people that are recruiting for their company find talent. I would say a hard number is that when we did our first event was that we were able to source 20 people, 17 into, unions, laborers, USPS and all that. And then the others were in tech. They were able to get interviews with tech companies that were presently there. So I think being able to think outside the box and being creative with what was in the interview process and candidate pipelines outside of just social media. How do you make it work is that you got to really meet people where they're at.
Do you think the resume will ever go away?
I don't think necessarily. I would think that a lot of companies, what I'm seeing is that they're doing research now on these candidates online. Like, I think digital resumes being a big thing. I think really, we talked about this. My team and I was that the video interview was a big thing until you see these platforms utilizing these videos as an interview, part of their interview process. And I think that's a big thing. And I think the next wave, I think AI is coming. It has been coming, I think will be utilized in the interview process as well.
So, Rubelyn, you talk about having a fire. Why do some people have this so-called fire and some people don't? Is it just genetics, personal drive? Like, why do some people have it, so to speak, and some people don't?
I really think it comes down to you as a person. If you want, I've always told this to myself. There are times that I do doubt myself. I mean, who doesn't, right? But you really have to overcome that doubt and fear within yourself. And if you want it bad enough, you make it work. Whatever it takes, you got to make it work if you really want to see it through.
And so, how often do you go to the gym?
I try to go 3 or 4 times a week because it helps me mentally.
You just have like a regular workout you do? You switch it up all the time? Or
I love cardio. I hate weights. But I think my accident, since my accident about 2 years ago now, I'm still recovering from that. Definitely have been careful with my shoulder and my lower left back. My lower left back and my left shoulder was the ones that got impacted. So I just got back into the routine of things, more so in cardio. I love doing cardio. I like to run and speed walk, but really being outside is helpful. So
nice. So Ruben, is anything I should ask you that I didn't, or anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, our big event, our big event, I think is the big one that yet the Pacific Northwest has to see is, HBCUs don't really come up here. And I think the basketball, I think Seattle's big in basketball as well. Talent. Seattle basketball is huge. I miss our Sonics. I would say, saving the date here on August 5th and 6th is big. We have the combine, the 3-on-3 tournament, as well as the career fair. A lot of them are coming here. We have the training coach of the New York Knicks flying out here to do the combine, with the HBCUs. And then we have companies from all over that will be part of this. I would say, yeah, candidate and then registration for the 3-on-3 tournament is also up as well. So I think that's a big thing that we are working on as a company is that, yes, while that's happening, we're also working with our clientele to recruit as well. We are recruiting roles while we're doing this event.
So Ruben, I forgot to ask you this during the pre-talk. Do you have any kind of discount or gift you want to give away? Some people do, some people don't.
You mean by like discounted gift? As in
like 20% off something, or free consultation, or
I'll get back to you on that one.
Okay.
Because I haven't thought about that, because I was like, wait, what am I doing? Yeah. If it was me, yes, but I don't want to make decisions
No, that's
without
fine.
my business partners here. Yeah.
That's fine. And can you share your social media links for yourself and your company so people can reach out to you?
Yeah. So on LinkedIn is Rubelyn Chu, RUBELYNCHU. And Twitter, same thing at Rubelyn Chu. And then for our Instagram, it's underscore access and then underscore two and then another underscore on Instagram. Same thing with Twitter. So if you find me, you'll find all my social media links going back to our organization here. So,
and to our listeners, we have the links to her gift she's going to give us in the future and her social media links on the show notes. You can find the show notes at www.cavnesshrblog.com. Be sure to share this episode with your friends and your network. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to Jason Cavness Experience. So, Rubelyn, can come to the end of our talk. Can you provide us any last minute wisdom or advice or anything you want to talk about?
Yes. The biggest thing for me is if there's something, just continue to stay curious. That's one. Don't ever stay stagnant into one thing or get stuck in your own ways. Two, if there's something you want to pursue and it's really within you, have the courage to pursue what you want to do. If you don't know what it is yet, keep going and you'll find it. I promise you, it'll be worth it.
Rubelyn, thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And to our listeners, thank you for your time as well. Remember to be great every day.